Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's take a look. All right, it's Josh Rubin here with the Rubin special on today, November 2nd, 2022, joined by the none other but Schaffer and Cella team. How you guys doing today?
We're good.
Hello, Josh. We're doing well.
How are you?
Well, we got another beautiful day here in New York City, and it's an interesting market out there. You know, there's activity, but yet there's this prevailing sense of worry. And so, we're both in New York City, and so it's kind of an interesting time because New York City has always been relatively stable as compared to some of these other secondary or suburban markets. What are you guys seeing out there?
Well, first off, thanks for having us on the show. We're really excited to be here.
Sure. Our
really
pleasure.
excited to chat Manhattan real estate, which we live, breathe, and eat real estate here on the Schaffer Cella team. So very happy to be here. You know, Josh, it's a really interesting market right now. What we're seeing particularly is two things really happening right now. Yes, you have certain buyers that are dropping out of the market that unfortunately have been counting their pennies, and with interest rates rising, it's not their moment. In tandem, we have a resurgence of buyers entering the market with a sense of pure optimism right now, despite the macro factors at play, right? They're coming in, they have the liquidity, they have the great income, they don't plan on leaving New York City. And these are clients who were sitting on the sidelines last year with mental fatigue from bidding wars, who are thrilled that they now have an opportunity to enter the market in a place with a little bit more leverage.
And more options.
Yeah, we're seeing that. And look, the reality is that a lot of our clients are not looking at anywhere near 7% in terms of interest rates. You know, we've taken a very intentional approach, our team, to really get to know every single lender out there and understand what unique types of products can service our clients. And so we've been playing this matchmaking role, making sure that it's not gloom and doom. My client who locked in yesterday locked in at 5%. He's absolutely planning on refinancing next year. But you know what? We landed a great deal on his 2-bedroom co-op, and they're thrilled. These clients, who last year were outbid. So despite the gloom and doom and sensationalism in the media, we're finding this new wave of buyers who are pretty optimistic.
And
Josh,
looking past the noise, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it are national factors. And in New York, I just see the dynamics at play being slightly different. And even to the point where, our team does Manhattan all across the board. We also do a ton in Brooklyn. I would say our book of business is 50-50 split between the two boroughs. And it's interesting, you might go to certain parts of Manhattan, say Midtown, where things are moving more slowly. There's more options at play. It's one dynamic. And then you move over to Park Slope and you're in the 2-bedroom brownstone market, and all of a sudden there's still bidding wars. Things are still going well over ask. 10 offers coming in on day one. So it also kind of, in our experience, looking across various geographies within New York City, has become fairly clear to us that the market is moving in different ways in different pockets. And so you can't necessarily speak to the entire market as a whole, looking at both boroughs as if everything is happening in the same way all over the place.
Yeah, because if you do that, of course, you're going to wind up with your face pressed up against the glass and you pass by, right?
Exactly.
If you go to Park Slope expecting the same dynamic that you see in Midtown, then you're going to wind up, in your rental, which is fine if you want to stay home under your blanket. But at the end of the day, if you want to actually get something done, you have to look at each individual opportunity unto itself, right? I mean, there was a situation I was speaking to my friend and our colleague, Mara Bloom from Sotheby's the other day. Yeah. And she was telling me about another colleague of ours, Danielle Sevier, who had a listing at 132 Perry asking 615. Not only did it sell in a week, but it is now in contract for well over $7 million. That's in today's market, folks.
Yeah, wow. It is still happening.
Yeah. So, if you're in Park Slope in the 2-bedroom brownstone market, or if you're in the 3-bedroom West Village market, like things are still popping. right?
It's still popping, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. I was out with a buyer over the weekend, 450 Washington.
Yeah.
The redevelopment, being done by Related.
Right.
They're in their soft launch. It's not even on Street Easy yet. They don't even plan on doing their full launch until January. We walked in, they had just started showings maybe in the last week. I expected to have full pick of the litter, full availability list open, no offers yet, maybe some slow moving conversations starting. They already have a number of things in contract. We're looking at an availability list. They're like, this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. We can't look at this, we can't look at that. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit all over the place depending on where you're looking. And I will say the more competitive parts of the market in the neighborhoods that we're discussing that have always been super popular, the demand is there.
Yeah.
And the wealth is here. So, it is what it is. But it's interesting.
It's interesting that you say the wealth is there, because that's what I've been telling people. New York has always been such a concentration for income and assets per capita that we're able to kind of shrug a lot of other things off that say, the Columbus, Ohio market, where, it saw this euphoric rise up. Now they're seeing a little bit more of an impact, because that's a market where somebody who has a combined household income of, say, $150,000 is going to be impacted if they have to spend another, say, $500 a month in a mortgage cost. A lot of those people who are going to the Related project that you mentioned, they're all cash, or they're taking portfolio loans. So they don't really care. They're really about the product and the opportunity than they are about, what's going to happen in the next 6 months in the market, because they're looking at it long term. I have a client who moved into 250 West a number of years ago. He bought a 2,500 square foot apartment. Then he had the opportunity to buy his neighbor out. So now he has a 5,000 square foot apartment. And, is it worth $30 million? Is it worth $40 million? Who knows? He's there for the long term. So if you're there for 20 years, what do you really care what the market does in the next 6 to 12 months?
Right. Totally. And I will say, people in New York who are financing, as the market is shifting, as the, interest rates continue to hike up, it's, to your point, less of a situation for people in New York by which you've already stretched yourself so high to where even just one slight tick up blows everything over. You got to start, when those markets and outside of this city, people are getting forced out of the market for that reason, right? They've already been stretched too high. Here, in those situations where maybe they started at their stretched mark, the interest rate hike isn't necessarily pushing them out of the market. It's just pushing people to reconsider their budget and reconsider their options. So I'm seeing more of a shift at play with people as interest rates continue to make their twists and turns, but otherwise it's not necessarily forcing people out of the market. Again, because the wealth is here. So it's a different consideration.
Yeah. So you guys are at the agency, right?
Yes, we are.
And so I know that there was recently some news about the agency coming to New York City. What has that transition been like, or is it even a transition, given that Triple Mint was the prior broker and they were acquired by the guys over at the agency, which is a brokerage known in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Josh, it's been, first of all, a great transition for us. I would say, fortunately, the rest of the company is taking a lot of Triple Mint's tech, our awesome in-house tech. So for us, in that sense, what a seamless transition. But on top of that, I think we're just really excited to be aligned with this brand. It's a super luxury brand, but I would say holds a lot of ethics at the same time.
Sure.
Their number one rule, Josh, is, excuse my French, I know this is like no assholes, but we can get
that
behind
is what it
this.
is. This is true.
This is
right.
This is a brand that really cares about quality over quantity. Yep. And I think that we have a really exciting time here to make a mark on New York City real estate. We're not as well known out east, and we're ready to paint the town red. So let's go agency.
Yeah. I know Tyler is a colleague of yours, right? Tyler Whitman. He's obviously known through $1 Million Listing and a number of other, social media things that he's done in the last couple of years. Remarkable rise that he's had. And I know that he has sort of formed his own little bit of a presence out east in the Hamptons. And so I think that there's plenty of opportunity out there. It doesn't just have to be the sort of old shoe players like Corcoran and like Douglas Elliman, where I am. But I think that, a dynamic company like the agency could definitely make some headway out there for sure.
Agree. We're very excited.
Yeah.
There's an alignment in energy, and kind of taking a fresh perspective that I think really aligns well with our brand and what we've been looking to do as a team. So from that perspective, we've been really happy with the shift and the transition.
Yeah. So how long have you guys been working together now?
Oh man, how long has it been?
Woo!
Almost 3 years?
Yeah, about 3 years. We joined forces in 2019.
Yeah, 6 months before the pandemic.
Before the
Okay.
pandemic. To come out of the pandemic in a place where we were thriving was very exciting for the team. To be honest, I always tell Lauren, I don't remember real estate before Lauren. So
Yeah.
truly, it's been a wonderful marriage. We have a wonderful team, and we love what we do here.
Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah. And so what have been some challenges that you faced sort of, since the pandemic?
Ooh, throwing us with a whammy here.
You know what? I think for us, it's been a lot of just finding ways to keep the team engine running.
Yeah.
Because once you're connected to so many people, right, you got to figure out ways to build process that feels good and isn't overbearing, while at the same time doing your 24/7, regular brokering job.
Right.
So becoming a manager, I guess,
Yep.
as well as the team admin in some ways, as well as still being brokers, and
Yeah.
also being there for our two associates who are amazing and agents in their own right. They hold their own book of business. So we give them a lot of our overflow, especially as it relates to rentals, but they're also running around with their own clients. And that's been a big piece of our brand, that our culture, I would say, that perhaps makes us a little bit unique as a team. But all of a sudden, they're entering, into this world where they've maybe had a renter that they worked with last year. People are coming back. They now want to spend $3 million on a co-op in Manhattan. And then we have to jump in and really help coach and guide. So we're, it's almost like we're being pulled in a million directions and finding ways to approach all those directions with intention and with thoughtfulness, and make sure everybody on our team knows that we're here for them, but also finding time for ourselves. It's
a balance.
It's a balance. It's
balancing
finding
act.
that balancing act. And I think, Josh, you've had your team for a long time now, and you guys are huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I feel like we can, in theory, get a lot of good advice from you. You're well ahead of us in this growth period, but it's just a lot. It can be a lot sometimes.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of, as you said, there are a lot of different hats that we wear as team leads, and it's a matter of finding what systems work for you and the members of the team, and making sure that you have the right members in place. Because what I found as a team leader is that it's really about culture more than it is about profit. And I've had situations where I've had agents on the team who just want to do things their way, and they want the opportunity and the support of a team, but they don't want to really fit in. And so we've regrettably had to sort of part ways, even though there was great opportunity for profit. It just wasn't a cultural fit. And so, we've had a couple agents pass through who have been sort of almost like a bull in the china shop mentality, where they'll do deals, but then we'll have to constantly be cleaning up behind them because of the wake that they've created with the things that they say and the style of business. And I think that the most successful people in our business, I think in any market, and I'm not talking about the sort of A- B players, but the A+ players, people that we all look up to, like say John Berger and Leonard Steinberg, Lauren Muss, Sabrina Saltiel, people like that. They all have one thing in common, and that not only do they work hard, they know the market like the back of their hand, and they're patient, and they tell people the truth. And so these are all people that I've looked up to throughout my career. And so these are things that I strive for. And I really try to instill in the people on my team, being consistent while still being creative and having fun. And so when we bring people on the team, we hope for the best. And sometimes it works and they aspire to greatness and they know that they need to be patient. And other times, it's just not a fit. It's as simple as that. And so you have to recognize that, right?
Right. Totally. Because to your point, you can hire someone who is incredible in their own right and looks like the perfect fit on paper, but you're never fully going to know until you try. We have an ethos on our team, which is slow to hire, quick to fire. And I think that's important. I think that's the right expectation to set on both sides, right? Nobody being hired into a team wants to, just like they also in theory don't want to be strung along for too long, only then to be, let go. It always makes sense to make sure that people are on the same page from the beginning. And if you're not, and it doesn't feel right and the gut check isn't there once you start ingraining that person into the business, just makes more sense to part ways and never to burn bridges. That's also a huge thing on our team.
Absolutely. Yeah, Lauren, you touched on something that is very apropos, and that is the gut check, right?
Yeah.
There are these little things when you start working with somebody. It's one thing to meet somebody for, a coffee for a half hour and an interview for an hour, but when you're actually in the trenches, you start to pick up on these little tells, and you have to trust yourself about these things. Like, is this somebody that I want to be in a foxhole with?
For sure. And usually if you're having that feeling, the person on the other side is also having that feeling. And it's just about getting comfortable, kind of coming to the table and having an honest conversation.
Right. Couldn't agree more. And so, in the 3 years that you've been working together, is there any one transaction that sort of stands out?
Wow.
What a great segue, Josh.
Perfect segue. So we won Rebney Deal of the Year in 2020.
Sorry, what's Rebney?
Oh, the Real Estate Board of New York. That oversees us, for those who may be watching and are not familiar with Rebney. And
Rebney was actually in the news recently, right? Because was it Heather McDonough, who was on the agent advisory committee, stepped down, right? Because she said, what did she say? It was taxation without representation or something, right? And so, Rebney, of course, is the governing body that sort of oversees us and applies rules and regulations to our industry and provides some structure and support, of course, with different documents and questions and some legal help. But every year they have this Rebney Deal of the Year, right? And they give it out both for residential and commercial. And so you guys had a deal that was recognized by them?
We did, and what an honor. And thank you for memorializing today, because sadly, we won this during the throes of the pandemic. So we were watching on television.
It was the only gala they hosted, which was virtual.
Okay.
So we never got to go.
So we never really had a moment to capture this transaction. But let's set the stage for you, Josh, because this was quite the saga of a transaction. Let's discuss the actual apartment itself first. This was a 3,000 square foot palatial home with Central Park views that had not been renovated in 35 years.
Wow.
And had been custom designed at that time with custom wood throughout the entire apartment, including drywall covering portions of the windows, drop ceilings in various areas of the apartment. It really was one of the most unique homes I've ever stepped into. And my dear client at the time had, grown a family there. And they were just in the initial phases of starting to plan, letting go of this home. And her husband was very emotionally attached, rightfully so. He poured a lot of time and energy and money at the time into this home. So we originally listed this home for rent for $16K. This was in late 2018. And just as and fortunately, we found a renter very quickly. That was interesting. But just as we have half executed leases, I get a phone call from my client that her husband sadly passed away. So
was that like sudden?
It really it was a bit sudden in that moment. We thought he had maybe another year or two left.
Okay, so he had been sick, but it was he was expected to live a little bit longer. Okay,
correct. And and it was just strange because I kid you not, Josh, this was literally as I got half executed leases, I got that phone call. So somebody up there was looking out, I guess, and said, "Don't sign that lease." So we ended up, she called me and said, "Look, the estate, because the apartment was owned through an estate, wants to sell." Now, that was the first of our challenges, was we were dealing with a estate. And as you know, Josh, if you've dealt with multiple states in your career, there is multiple peanut gallery opinions of where this apartment should trade and what it should be worth.
Of course.
So that was our first challenge, right? We listed the apartment in I believe this was late 2018, for a very high price, got very little traction. And fortunately, we're in a position where we were able to delist and recalibrate. Now, during that process, we were also transitioning to triple mint. So every brokerage and their mother was vying for this listing as we delisted for a short period of time. But fortunately, we had a very strong rapport with our seller, and she knew that we were the ladies for this job.
Yeah.
So first challenge was, how do we get this estate on board to list at a number that will be palatable to this market? And remember, this was back in 2019, where fundamentally north of 4, we were in a buyer's market at this stage. Yeah. And so we had to come to market with a much more aggressive pricing strategy. I remember we spent hours putting the pitch of the century together, because we knew if we're going to walk out of this estate, we needed a number, right? And in order to sell this home properly, as you know, that was our biggest challenge. And fortunately, pitch aside, they were finally willing to listen. We listed in late 2019, I would say the fall of 2019. Within 2 months, we're in contract. We had over 30 showings.
What price did you come on at? I know it's a 3,000 square foot apartment.
So we were originally at 8. We came at 625.
So back in 2018, it was listed for $8 million.
Yeah.
Then we were able to convince them down to 625, which was still a little bit too high, but much better than 8.
Yes.
So it had been listed at $8 million back in 2018.
Correct.
Right. And then they pivoted to a rental initially with you.
Well, no, we were first a rental, then we pivoted to sale.
In 18?
Correct.
Okay, got it. So it was a rental, then a sale for $8 million.
Then a delist.
Then you took it off the market to sort of recalibrate.
Correct.
Now it's 2019. Now you've dropped the price by, more than 25%, which is a steep price drop.
Steep price drop.
Absolutely necessary price drop as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
The biggest thing is this home, and we had brought in several architects and contractors. This needed about a $2 million renovation.
At minimum. That's like a baseline just to get it up to snuff into modern day ability. Yeah.
So we were impressed at the great momentum we had when we first listed, knowing that there were challenges, right? I mean, wood everywhere, $2 million renovation. But fortunately, the apartment had the bones, right? And you can't recreate Central Park views. These were, for the most part, protected, given its positioning on the 30th floor. So our first offer comes in, Josh, and it is $2 million below ask.
Well, now, you know what I say to people like that? I call them up, the brokers, right? And I'm assuming I'm giving the buyer's agent in this situation credibility enough that they actually called you rather than just winging an offer in an email, knowing that it was.
That's the kicker, Josh.
This is the best part.
They didn't have a broker originally, so they were coming in direct.
And their approach was to say, we hate the apartment for all of these reasons. Here's all the bad things about it. And in light of this, here's our offer.
Yeah. So what I tell people in that situation, guys, is it's very simple. I say, we received your offer. Thanks so much. I think you might be confused. This is the listing that is 3,000 square feet on a park block asking 625,
Right.
or either that, or you got your numbers confused. You just switch this one.
Are we talking about the same apartment here?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, look, we did not counter. This was not worthy of a counter at the stage. And fortunately, we were having very good momentum. And maybe a week or two later, a lovely buyer came through the door. This is a former pop star who was absolutely delightful. They came in with a broker. Always helpful to have a buyer's agent who actually knows the market. With with intention, they came in, they were financing, they weren't all cash, but they came in with intention. And Josh, I kid you not, they actually loved the apartment in its current state. And we're planning on doing very little cosmetic renovation, which was a pure miracle in its own right. So
they were fans of the wood and drop ceiling.
Oh yeah, they loved it. Who knew? Who knew? There is an apartment for everyone in this world, Josh.
Amen.
So the story, this gets juicy, Josh. So we send a contract out. Now at this stage, cash buyers are fuming and have at least gained the awareness that, hey, maybe we should hire a broker to help represent us because we're getting nowhere, obviously.
Right.
So at this stage, they hired a buyer's agent. God bless Emma Cairns. If you're watching, love ya. She came in and
Our hero.
Yeah, she really was in that moment. And she got them to come to a number that was much stronger. Let's say, I think they came up to 5 at that stage. So now we're talking at least real business here. But at the same time, we had a contract out with these lovely buyers who were financing. And what we learned, Josh, at that stage was that this was a good kicker. Lauren, would you like to share this one?
I think you need to keep it.
So we learned that the apartment had never been legally combined with the Department of Buildings. So even though our seller had all of these architect drawings, our attorney was sure it was originally, everybody was like, this was done to the nines, but it turned out that they never had the final sign off.
Right.
So as you know, this presents challenges for anybody who's financing because a bank will not lend in a unit that has not been legally combined with the Department of Buildings.
Yeah, and because they never got that final sign-off many decades ago, they effectively were back at square one on that legal combination. Yeah.
So at this stage, we're hiring architects. The only way to consummate this deal at this stage is to have my seller go through the motions of filing permits, getting this done. And as you know, this is a big, potentially at the time, 6 to 10 month job. And potentially longer, could have been over a year.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that when you're dealing with what's called in New York City a letter of completion, which is essentially the New York City Department of Buildings recognition that the apartment, which was formerly 2 or more apartments, is now legally formed into one home. Now, it's not illegal like you're going to go out and stab somebody illegal, but it's just not recognized by the city to be legal. You can still live there. You can still theoretically get financing. It just makes it a little bit more challenging. But in any case, it can be. I mean, if you're 6 months, then that is considered a miracle when it comes to dealing with anything regarding the Department of Buildings, and especially a letter of completion. It can easily be 10 or 12 months. And I've seen them stretch on for years. You just
Right. And the reality is that we just did not know this until we had contracts out. So this apartment is not listed with that entire layer of consideration in mind. So it came as a surprise to us. Of course, we had to share that with the buyers.
But here comes your cash buyer on a white horse. Woo!
Yes, coming on in.
That is exactly.
You know what's about to happen.
At this point, our cash deal is looking pretty damn good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were, and fortunately, despite all of this, we were able to get them up a solid amount because at this point, you had 2 buyers who were so emotionally attached to this apartment. Buyer 1 was willing to wait this out for this to happen. Yep. But buyer 2 was willing to say, look, we're going to come in with a stronger offer and we're going to inherit this headache for your seller.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I think they came in slightly under
they were
the
slightly
financed buyers in price, but were willing to take on the entire headache of getting the combination on themselves.
And that was worth a lot of money.
Right. That's value.
So at this stage, we made the decision to pivot to our cash deal. And, I had to break up with our first buyer, and it was a very sad breakup. The buyer pulled out all the stops. They came back saying, we will, they provided this love letter. It was really epic. I do have this saved. They offered a private musical performance for my seller. And they pleaded.
Because I'm sorry, because they're a former pop star.
Oh,
right?
yeah, former pop star. He was great.
Someone everybody knows.
Yes.
Anybody who's
This is getting juicy, guys. Is this going to be on TMZ?
On TMZ, yes. Look, my heart broke. And I tell you this, I remember reading the letter to my seller, and she was in tears. She was a lady of great moral integrity. So this was tough to have to pivot. But the reality was the cash deal was in her best interest. It was going to promise us an expedient close, and they were going to take on this headache. So despite the love letter of the century, we moved forward with our cash deal. Now, cash deal moved very quickly, Josh. I think they signed a contract within a couple of business days. They were not messing around. Now, this story is not over yet. Wow. They wire the funds. We have a
deposit, which in New York City is 10% of the purchase price, and we're talking about a $5.5 million deal at this point. Or something?
We have $550,000 sitting in escrow, and I get a call from buyer agent 1 saying, Heather, my buyers can do all cash now. We finished it. We'll come in higher. Can we make this happen?
Oh my God.
So I have to now call the estate and let them know we're dealing with, this new offer coming in. We hadn't executed the contract yet.
Right.
And the estate comes back to me and says, well, could we hold a best and final for these two parties by tomorrow at noon?
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm at this stage, like, I'm going to rip my hair out.
If you want both buyers to walk away real angry and to start at square zero, that is exactly how one does it.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I was able to assuage my buyer, and my buyer really felt like I have $550,000 sitting in escrow. Like, I need to countersign this. Money is real. It's there. Let's just, and so after maybe 5 hours or so, they countersigned the contract, and we ended up closing on this deal in late February, just a few weeks pre-pandemic.
In 20.
So just in
the nick of time.
In the nick of time. It was a doozy of a deal. But we made it. We got to the finish line. My client was so thrilled. She's now back in the city in her pied-à-terre.
We just saw her last week.
Just saw her last week.
Yeah.
She's, it worked out, but wow.
Yeah. It's incredible that you went through this, and not only was it a challenging listing to begin with because of the aesthetics, but then you found your buyer, and then in the course of due diligence, of course, you realize there's this little thing called a letter of completion. And I've sold quite a few combinations in my day, and in fact, we're just getting ready to launch one now. And it's not the combination apartment is a very interesting idiosyncratic listing in the city. Because you think, oh, here's a beautiful 3-bedroom or more in some cases. And then you realize that it's been combined. And if you're somewhat new to the business, you haven't encountered this issue before. But once you find your buyer, the buyer's attorney is doing their due diligence and says, oh, this is apartment 32 AD. And so then they're looking for a letter of completion on the New York City Department of Buildings website, and they can't find it. And then you're scrambling at the 11th hour saying, well, what's a letter of completion? And then you try to put it together, and one doesn't exist, because oftentimes the buildings will say, okay, yeah, the plans are fine. We see that you have licensed and insured contractors, get to work. They do the work. They live in the apartment for a number of years, having paid their architect and contractors. And they realize that the architect didn't actually do what they were supposed to do. And I just navigated that on another deal for almost $4 million. And, like the typical transaction timeline is 60 to 90 days, right? From the contract to close. But the DOB timeline can be 6 or 12 or even more months. And so what you have to do is you often wind up having to establish an escrow to make sure that everything is closed out properly. It could be a letter of completion, or it could be something as insignificant as a plumber who pulled a permit who never closed it for whatever reason. They forgot, or you thought you paid them, but you didn't pay them all that they were owed. And so they still have this permit that's open. Sometimes it can be many years later, and to close out those permits can be quite difficult. So you establish an escrow that survives the closing and ensures that the seller still has skin in the game to make sure that everything gets closed out and buttoned up. But in this case, you were lucky to have found a cash buyer who was willing to absolve your seller of any responsibility, and especially because it was an estate. God only knows where the beneficiaries are and the executors are. They might not even be in the city. And so that was definitely the right call for your seller. And I think that everybody in this situation got lucky, and they were very fortunate to have somebody who gave them sage counsel to just stick with the bird in hand. And in this case, you already had the buyer's deposit. So let's not roll the dice. God only knows if you had gone with that other buyer for a couple of dollars more, they could have walked away from the whole deal once, the pandemic was happening and markets were diving. In February, the markets were adjusting rapidly.
Right. For
That's
sure.
right. That's absolutely right. No, I think, we did make the sound decision in that moment. And truly, I'd like to, Josh, we pray to the real estate gods here at the Schaffer Cella team, and they were looking out for us.
It's true. We do.
They're
real.
Looking out
They're
for
real.
us.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I still encounter them to this day. I mean, karma is real out there.
It is real. It is real.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so, now you have this team. You guys have been working together since 2019. And, what do you think the future is going to hold for us?
You know what? I see you're always in a buyer's market or a seller's market. I feel like there's a market for everyone. To our point at the beginning of our chat today, we made the point that, we saw a layer of people exit the market when the market started to transition, March, April, May, prior in this year. But what happens is there's a resurgence of a new layer that gets excited about this kind of opportunity. So I think, I think we're going to sit here for a little bit of time, especially as interest rates continue to sit where they are or even increase further. But at some point, inevitably, things are going to shake out and pricing is going to come down to a point where demand starts to fuel, and that's where the domino effect starts to happen. And at that point, we'll see the layer of people that were excited about the buyer's market that hadn't landed something yet. They might leave, and then there's going to be a new wave. So we just live in a land of optimism over here. We see such great value to any dynamic that's happening within the real estate world in New York. And at the end of the day, if you look historically at price appreciation, at real estate growth, how these assets kind of hold their value and increase over time, we feel really settled that New York City will always remain stable. It's just a matter of how long you hold your property. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who bought in, the summer of 2008, right before Lehman Brothers crash, right? And they held on to their properties. Because they're living in them, right? It's not an investment property. It's not something that they bought with a VA, no money down loan or what have you. They actually had serious equity in the property. It was something that worked well for them and their growing family. And they went on to sell it for 30% more 10 years later. So they did pretty well. It just required some patience and fortitude and knowing that they're in the greatest city in the world. So of course it's going to be a solid investment. So
that's exactly right.
So Lauren and Heather, let me ask you a question. If you both came to real estate from different businesses, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And so, obviously being in this business and its own set of challenges as compared to where you came from is its own monster. But if you had to say, go back 10 years and give yourself advice, what would that advice be?
Ooh, another whammy at us, Josh. Good question, though.
You know what? I actually want to hear your. I have an answer. But
I think if I had to go back 10 years, I would tell the person in me to embrace failure, to embrace the no's. I think that, especially now in this industry, we're in an industry where you need to plant seeds every day and you need to get comfortable with no. Because the more no's you get, the more yeses will circle in your sphere. And I think that the Heather 10 years ago didn't have the kind of mental fortitude to handle that. I think I built up sort of, I always call it sort of emotional ambivalence in this industry.
Yeah.
But truly, you have to embrace that. And I truly think if I had told myself that, to get really comfortable with it and to just be okay with it, I think at least my first year in the business, I would have felt a greater place of security and confidence. Truly, just embracing that.
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to that gut check. I wish that older future Lauren would have told past Lauren that if I wasn't feeling like the corporate world was right for me, it was my moment to jump into something new. And I think that I tried to make my old career work for longer than I needed to. I do think, and it's interesting, Heather and I both come from very similar corporate backgrounds. We both worked in human resources across various capacities. We not only were recruiters for various businesses, but we also held very generalist kind of roles and both worked in tech startups.
Yep.
So I think we love the tech startup world because there's a scrappiness that they look for when they hire, and you have a little bit more opportunity to really make a difference, even as just one human, as opposed to being a cog in the wheel. And I think that is something that for both of us, we really loved about our past roles. But inevitably, you do hit a ceiling in human resources. There's only so much that a CEO is willing to pay their human resources person when inevitably they're going to put that money elsewhere, like into sales.
Right.
And I think we both separately, we didn't know each other at the time, right? But I think we separately both came to this realization that there was more to this world than the ceiling we had already hit in our late 20s. There was more to life. There was more that we could put in front of people, but still taking the skills that we were really good at within HR, transfer it into another industry where we could add even greater value to people, as well as make more money, and so I think we both are really smart in making this transition, because we're still helping people. It's just hit life milestones. In a lot of ways, that's what we were doing in HR. Just we were doing it within the confines of how do we help someone grow their career? How do we help them make more money within this job that they have or within this path that we've set for them within this one company? So I think we take that, you just take it into somebody's personal life. Now the milestone has changed. It's helping somebody build wealth for themselves, but also build a home for themselves. And so for us, I think we bring the same joy. I wish that my future self had just, given me that encouragement to say, you know what, you can take your skills now and find a greater home for those skills.
Right. But so much of that though has to do with feeling secure in your position in life, and so many of us are wired for security. And a foundation that we know we can rely on. For something as basic as putting food on our table. And what I found is that there's something to be said for necessity being the mother of invention. And you're being forced into something that you might not otherwise have considered to be the right fit for you, but yet you're catapulting yourself because you have no other choice, right? And so I was speaking to a colleague of mine here at Element the other day about what drives us, and what drives us is not just helping people, but also a fear of failure. And so we have no choice but to get up in the morning and work our asses off because it's all we know to do. And so yes, it's a great career, but it's interesting to sort of understand the motivation behind the various stories of success.
For sure.
I agree, Josh. And I think for me, that was very much always present in my first several years in the business because, I knew I never wanted to step back into corporate America. So I had to do this work and I had to run into an industry. And fortunately, I just happen to love working in this industry. And also Lauren and I, we have very entrepreneurial spirits. So we knew when we joined forces, we would bring sort of an elevated level to this business. And I think that every day I think myself that I'm not in corporate America, but I agree. Fear is present. And it's a motivational factor.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, guys. Heather and Lauren, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story about inspiration, growth, and success. You guys are obviously on a very solid track, and look forward to continue to watch you grow.
Aw, thank you
Thank
so
you, Josh.
much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for joining us on today's Rubin Special, and look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Take care, Josh. Thank you.
Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's take a look